behalf of General Richard H. Thompson, Commander of the Army Materiel Command, we proudly present AMC's own, the 389th Army Band. Under the direction of Chief Warrant Officer Thomas N. Altringer. I'm your narrator, Specialist Henry Brown from the Yuma Proving Ground at Yuma, Arizona. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please rise for the singing and playing of our national anthem? On 4th May, 1962, Army General Order 23 established the Army Materiel Command as a major Army command as of 8th May, with Lieutenant General Frank S. Besson, Jr. as the first commander. In 1985, General Richard H. Thompson commissioned the Army Band to write a march in celebration of the Army Materiel Command. Master Sergeant Ron Hickey accepted General Thompson's challenge and produced Share the Pride. Not content with just a march, General Thompson then challenged the Soldiers' Chorus to produce words for the AMC March. If you would turn to the back of your program, you will find the words to the AMC March. We invite you to sing along with us and help us share the pride of the 25th anniversary of the Army Materiel Command as we proudly perform Share the Pride. Helping to keep our country free, we are the Army Materiel Command, developing what the Army needs to meet its technological demands, providing what it takes to keep the peace. We are the people with ideas and expertise. We share the pride that's Army-wide that comes from leading the way, 'cause we're the arsenal for the brave today. On 22nd January of 1986, General Thompson was successful in having the 389th Army Band receive the official designation as AMC's own. And as such, we now represent not only Fort Monmouth, but all of the Army Materiel Command. During his visit to Fort Monmouth on 28 August 1986, at the ribbon-cutting ceremony held for AMC's own new rehearsal facilities, General Thompson announced his idea of having his band visit all of his major installations in a concert tour celebrating the bicentennial of the Constitution and the 25th birthday of the Army Materiel Command. We are still not sure if General Thompson decided to send us on this tour because we are so good or because he was completely soaked by the rainstorm. However, we accepted General Thompson's challenge, and our concert for you this afternoon is the culmination of General Thompson's dream. We will present our complete concert for the Fort Monmouth community at Thompson Park on 17th May, and we invite you to attend and bring a friend. Before we continue this afternoon's program, we would like to introduce the commander of the Communications Electronic Command, Major General Robert D. Morgan.
Good afternoon. I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to welcome you to this dress rehearsal for the 389th AMC Zone Army Band. At this point in the program, I'd like to recognize some of the very important people who have joined us today. We have Mr. Morales, who is General Thompson and AMC's Public Affairs Coordinator for this tour of AMC Zone. And as you might suspect, we are absolutely disappointed because once again the weather has come between our boss, General Thompson, and Mrs. Thompson in celebrating today with us. And hopefully we are going to do a couple of things. We are recording this presentation, and Mr. Morales will take the recording back to General and Mrs. Thompson when he departs later on this evening, so they will have an opportunity to see and hear a band that they are so very, very proud of. Today's performance is a prelude, as you know, of the band's upcoming concert tour to mark the bicentennial of the United States Constitution and the 25th anniversary of the Army Materiel Command. On April 25th, the band leaves on its first leg of a tour that will take it to dozens of cities across the nation and to all of the Army Materiel Command's major subordinate commands. Those commands and their civilian neighbors have a real treat in store in the music of the 389th. We're lucky enough to be able to preview this music this afternoon. General Thompson, our AMC commander, long has been one of the band's most enthusiastic supporters. And it was through his efforts, as was mentioned, that Secretary of the Army, John O. Marsh, officially designated the 389th as AMC Zone. General Thompson conceived the tour, the plan of the tour during his visit, as was mentioned, and it is a twofold opportunity for the band to celebrate our anniversary as well as the Constitution of the United States. Because of General Thompson's efforts in making the concept of the band tour a reality, it is fitting that we have here today, although he couldn't attend, some remarks that he made earlier today over our video conferencing facility that he wanted to share with you today. So if we can, I'd like to have the recording of General Thompson's remarks played.
Well, obviously I wanted to be there for the dress rehearsal. I never get a chance to get up to CCOM as often as I want to, but I think everyone knows, and General Morgan above all else knows, that all he needs to do is to tell me that the band is doing something special, and immediately I put CCOM on my schedule. General Morgan is obviously a very smart guy. I guess the possible exception I'd make to that is that they invited me to the dedication of your new building last August, and it rained on all of us. And we had a wet and a happy ceremony, and today I guess without me you're just going to have a wet ceremony. I've been commander of the Army Materiel Command now, as you probably know, for 3 years. And as many of you know, during that entire period, I've been looking for ways to show off what I consider one of my prime assets of the Army Materiel Command's prime asset. That's our tremendous band. And luckily, I think, for not only AMC, but for all the people who have the opportunity to listen to the band, 1987 has given not just an opportunity, but a double opportunity to do exactly that. You know, we all know that our nation is celebrating the 200th anniversary of the signing of that great document, our Constitution. But there's something else not as well known, and that's the fact that the Army Materiel Command is celebrating its 25th birthday. And I think that's a wonderful coincidence because you've all heard me say ad nauseum that the Army Materiel Command exists only to support the soldiers. And of course, all of us know that we as soldiers exist only to support our nation and our Constitution. So I'm very, very pleased that the tour has been arranged. And of course, I guess I ought to thank a fellow sitting on Joe Morgan's right, Joe Morales, because he's done an awful lot of the hard work that put the show on the road. But there are lots of good reasons to send you on the road. People in the Northeast area, particularly selfish people up at Fort Monmouth, have been enjoying your performances for many, many years. And they appreciate your talents, and they know your fine reputation. But that really isn't fair to the rest of the Army Materiel Command family, and nor is it fair to a much larger American audience. And they're going to have the opportunity to discover what the folks in the Northeast area already know, that the band and the six ensembles are made up of top-notch soldiers who are also excellent musicians. Now, I'm told that the music that you've selected for the tour is not only highly entertaining and appealing to a vast number of listeners, but also will do a lot to link us together as Americans who share a common experience. And an experience, of course, that we can all share and all remember through our rich musical heritage. America's music reminds us of times of adventure, of danger and battle, times of sadness and loss, and times of plain celebration and fun. It stirs our patriotic spirit and reminds us of families and friends and home. And that's, I think, what you're going to be able to bring to a large number of new audiences. And I think it's appropriate for this bicentennial year, when we're looking for renewed appreciation at the very blessings of this country and this land and the rights and protections that all of us share under our Constitution. You're also going to have an opportunity to do something else, something that you do best. You're also going to help me by sharing the pride for the Army Materiel Command, and you're going to help me to tell the Army Materiel Command story. You're going to tell that story to the over 120,000 men and women, military and civilian, who make up the Army Materiel Command family. And these are people who richly deserve to have their stories told. The American public should know much more than it does about what we do in the Army Materiel Command for this country. And you and the AMC's own band tell that story so very, very well. And through this tour, I want you to do something else. I want you to be a link between at least some of the 171 installations where AMC people are, who are scattered throughout the country. Let me end these remarks with first a vote of thanks to your commander, Mr. Altringer, to your enlisted bandmaster, Sergeant Harrell, to your master of ceremonies, Sergeant Brown. Sergeant Brown, I went to a lot of effort to get you that job. I hope you know that.
Thank you, sir.
To all of the people who worked so very, very hard to make the logistics of the tour possible. And of course, if he's there, is Ted Hammer there?
No, sir.
I'd like to make sure that that we thank Ted, because as the transportation officer, he's the guy who had the real tough job, Joe, next to you, of making all the travel arrangements work. Well, some of you may know that within the next 12 or 13 days, I'm going to end some 43 years as a soldier. And I want you to know that I have a very large and a deeply felt personal feeling towards every one of the people in AMC's own. I think you do a great job for us. I want you to know when I hear your music that you lift my spirits, you reinforce my pride in being affiliated with an outstanding command, with having had the opportunity to be a soldier. And I guess above all else, you offered to me just plain flat enjoyment. And I don't think I could ask for, nor should anyone else ask for more than that. Let me wish you Godspeed on your travels. I hope you take all the high roads and hit all the high notes. But above all, a sincere thank you. And Robert, you have an award. I guess you're going to give them to them later this afternoon.
Yes, sir.
Which is a tangible way of expressing my appreciation for just an outstanding job of work. And be careful, and God bless you all.
United States Army Materiel Command, Certificate of Recognition for Superior Unit Performance awarded to the 389th United States Army Band Zone, AMC Zone, for outstanding meritorious service during calendar year 1986. During this time period, the members of the 389th Army Band distinguished themselves while providing musical support to numerous military units and the United States Army recruiters. Their outstanding professionalism was clearly demonstrated in the performance of exceptionally difficult tasks with such excellence that the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, together with the National Federation of Music Clubs, awarded them their 5-star coveted award in a recent parade of American music national competition. The 389th superior performance is in keeping with the highest Army traditions and brings credit to themselves, the United States Army Materiel Command, and the United States Army. Signed, Richard H. Thompson, General, United States Army, Commanding.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's sit back and relax and hear the finest band in the United States Army.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to AMC Zone, the 389th Army Band Concert celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Army Materiel Command. The first selection we'd like to perform is entitled Chester. The tune on which Chester is based was born during the American Revolution and appeared in a book of melodies and anthems composed by William Billings. Chester was so popular that it became the song of the American Revolution, sung around the campfires of the Continental armies and played by fifers on the march. But the job begun in 1776 was not completed. By 1787, it was evident to the Founding Fathers that something must be done to revise or strengthen the Articles of Confederation. So in May of 1787, in the same brick building from which the Declaration of Independence had been proclaimed, the Constitutional Convention was called to order. Certain notables were conspicuous by their absence. Thomas Jefferson was TDY to France on diplomatic duty. Patrick Henry, quote, smelt a rat and declined to serve. In fact, the convention was so poorly attended that Rhode Island sent no delegates at all. But the 55 delegates who did attend accomplished the miracle of Philadelphia and did indeed write a constitution for the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, we proudly present William Schumann's arrangement of William Billings' Chester. 13, 14, and 15 are known as the Civil War Amendments. They are concerned with abolition of slavery, equal protection of laws and due process, and Negro suffrage. Equal rights that had been denied to all Americans, well, to all male Americans, were now guaranteed under the Constitution. But the final words of many amendments are as follows. The Congress shall have the power to enforce the article of appropriate legislation. And as we know, no American will willingly obey a law that is considered to be wrong. So the fight for equality was just moving into a new phase, and more laws would need to be passed in order to bring equality to everyone in our great nation. The music of Stephen Foster is filled with the nostalgia associated with mid-19th century America. His songs contain the mixed emotions that were symbolic of this time frame. Sammy Nestico has written a fine symphonic selection of Stephen Foster's melodies that includes "Oh Susanna," "Old Folks at Home," and "Carry Me Back to Old Virginia." Ladies and gentlemen, a tribute to Stephen Foster. In 1913, the 16th Amendment was passed and has been universally disliked by the majority of Americans ever since. This amendment is fought about every election year plus every year in between, and no one yet has been happy with any law made concerning the 16th Amendment. I'm, of course, referring to the establishment of an income tax and, of course, the most dreaded day of the year, April 15th. The only composer capable of offsetting the horrors of the IRS is perhaps America's March King, John Philip Sousa. Believing that no concert is complete without at least one march by this great American composer, for the band's next selection, Mr. Altringer has chosen Warren Barker's arrangement of Sousa. Mr. Barker has used High School Cadets, Washington Post, Semper Fidelis, El Capitan, The Thunderer, Keen Cotton, Hands Across the Sea, Manhattan Beach, and of course, Stars and Stripes Forever, in his tribute to Sousa. For the band's next selection, Sousa. Our Constitution started life as a compromise between different thinking people who perhaps could only agree on the fact that they needed a system of rules to govern their disagreements. Surely war is a disagreement that has gone beyond all the rules, but our Constitution was made to work even when the citizens of our great country were opposed to entering a war. And some would even disagree as to which side of the war we should fight on. The war to end all wars threw us completely into becoming an active member of those nations known as world powers and involved us in the international actions that previously America had avoided. Over There Fantasy, scored for concert band by Eric Leisen, has to be one of the finest arrangement of melodies from the World War I era. You will hear Over There, Goodbye Broadway, Hello France, and Where Do We Go From Here? Throughout the arrangement, you can hear and feel the spirit that gripped the country as once again America went to war. AMC's Own proudly presents now Over There Fantasy. The Constitution of the United States is the oldest national constitution in use in the world today. That it is still in use can be attributed to the fact that it is still a living document and ever-changing. That such a document could be written at all is truly astounding. Of the 74 deputies chosen by their respective state legislatures, only 55 took part in the proceedings, and of these 55, only 39 signed the Constitution. It was 9 months before the 9th state ratified the Constitution, and it was not until 4th March 1789 that the new government began proceedings under the new Constitution. During the first half of our concert, we have been highlighting some of the amendments that have been added to our Constitution. And before we take a break, we would like to perform for you Jerry Gray's arrangement of Glenn Miller's American Patrol. This big band chart rearranged for concert band depicts the feeling of optimism that was beginning to affect this country during the middle of World War II. Though he gave up his life while serving his country, Major Glenn Miller left us a rich legacy in his music. There will be a 15-minute intermission following AMC's own rendition of Glenn Miller's American Patrol. We will continue the second half of our program with AMC's own stage band under the direction of Staff Sergeant Louis E. Branch. The big band era covered the second quarter of this century with music that is still enjoyed today. Woody Herman, a composer and big band leader from Milwaukee, was undoubtedly one of the most popular sidemen of the 1930s. In 1939, Woody Herman wrote a tune appropriately entitled Woodchopper's Ball. For our first selection, AMC's own stage band will perform Glenn Ozer's arrangement of Woody Herman's Woodchopper's Ball. Only one amendment ratified and added to our Constitution has ever been repealed. Known by many names, officially it was the 18th Amendment. And this amendment prohibited anything to do with intoxicating liquors from buying to selling and especially consuming and brewing. This amendment might have been the reason for the birth of the blues, but by the Roaring '30s, the big bands were determined to raise everyone's spirits with the material from composers that came from every imaginable source, including hotel telephone numbers. Who would ever believe that a hotel telephone number would sell 40,000 copies? Composer Jerry Gray did just that with Pennsylvania 65000. Our next selection was written by a gentleman born about 3 miles from Fort Monmouth at Red Bank, New Jersey. His given name was William Basie, but by 1940 he was known by one and all as Count Basie. Ladies and gentlemen, AMC's own stage band's rendition of Count Basie's 1 O'Clock Jump. The 19th Amendment was another hotly contested amendment. In just one short sentence, life in America was good. Article 19 reads, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on the count of sex." Many a battle was fought on the home front in order to get this amendment passed. For our final selection, the stage band would like to turn once again to the forever popular Glenn Miller with perhaps his greatest hit, "In the Mood." In 1950, the 22nd Amendment was passed. This amendment limited the tenure of presidential office to 2 terms. And in the early 1950s, America again went to war. Only this time it was a police action. But when is a war not a war? This question continues to cause high-spirited discussion today. And the Constitution is searched and interpreted by both sides of the question. But for the men and women fighting, there was no difference between a police action and a declared war. Because of the Korean technological advances, bands became able to amplify their musical instruments. This increased the acceptance of the smaller groups because now a 5-piece group could sound as loud as a 20-piece dance orchestra. Individual groups such as Elvis the Pelvis, Little Anthony and the Imperials, and the Beach Boys were quick to see the possibilities of these new electronic marvels, and their names came to be adored by the younger generation and condemned by the older generation. Yes, there was a generation gap before Boy George and Huey Lewis. The Army also recognized that new technological advances were happening very quickly and determined that there was a need for a single organization to manage both the development and production for Army materiel. This concept was approved, and on 8th May 1962, the Army Materiel Command was born. We now present Crescendo, AMC's own show band bringing you the music popular during the birth of the Army Materiel Command.
Not as bright as your eyes tonight, blow out the candle and make your wish come true. For I'll be wishing that you love me too. That you love me too. Well, you're only 16, but you're my teenage queen. You are my queen, and you're the prettiest, the loveliest girl I've ever seen. 16 candles in my heart will glow forever and ever. For I love you so. I love you. Beep, beep, 5, 5, 4, 4, 4. I smell smoke in the auditorium. Charlie Brown, he's a clown. And Charlie Brown, he's gonna get caught. Just you wait and see.
Everybody always picking on me.
It's him on his knees. I know that's him yelling 7, come 11 down in the boys' room. Charlie Brown, he's a clown. That Charlie Brown, you're gonna get caught. Just you wait and see.
Everybody always picking on me.
Who's always writing on the wall? Who's always goofing in the hall? Who's always throwing spitballs? Yeah, you! He walks in the classroom cool and slow. Who calls the English teacher daddy? Oh, Charlie Brown, he's a clown. That Charlie Brown, you're gonna get caught. Just you wait and see.
Everybody always picking on me.
Well, East Coast girls are hip, I really those clothes they wear. In the northern girls with the way they talk, they knock me out when I'm down there. The Midwest farmer's daughter really makes you feel alright. In the southern girls with the way they kiss, they keep their boyfriends warm at night. I wish they all could be California. I wish they all could be California. I wish they all could be California girls. The West Coast has the sunshine, and the girls all get so tan. I dig a French bikini on the Wine Island girls by a palm tree in the sand. Been all around this great big world, and I've seen all kinds of girls. Yeah, but I can't wait to get back to the States, back to the cutest girls in the world. I wish they all could be California. I wish they all could be California. I wish they all could be California girls. Girls, 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 girls. I wish they all could be California. Girls, 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 girls. I wish they all could be California. Girls, 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 girls. I wish they all could be California. I wish they all could be California girls.
Barely 100 years from the start of the Civil War, we find ourselves in the beginning of another war that once again splits this great country apart. This time the conflict is not only brother against brother and culture against culture, but generation against generation. Words such as flower child and body count leap out of our television screens every night, and war was brought into our living rooms live and in color. The music of the late 60s and early 70s reflected the feelings of the younger generation, and a new style of protest music came into being, with some names being associated with nothing but protest songs. Some artists, such as Joan Baez and Bob Dylan, came to symbolize the unrest felt here at home. People began to voice questions never voiced in public before. Had we made a mistake? Should we be fighting this war? And the unrest that started the police action in Korea continued. Even the great V for victory of Sir Winston Churchill became a protest for peace. But what of the soldier who was fighting in Vietnam? Would no one sing songs in his defense? A voice was heard, that of a young Special Forces Green Beret sergeant who sang of the love of his country and patriotism, and of doing his duty. But when the soldiers came home, they found no hero's welcome. They were called names and spat upon, and these soldiers felt that they should hang their heads in shame, but they did not understand why. But the voice of the Vietnam veteran would not be still. He came home, and he continued to fight, except now he was fighting to put his country back together again, and regain the pride publicly that he refused to give up privately. Slowly the fight went on, but the pride in America was growing. Then we found ourselves in the midst of a new crisis that began to fill the evening news: Iran and the American hostages. Each day for 444 days, we listened to the evening news, which always began with some form of, it's now the 112th day of captivity in Iran. We wept when we learned of the death of the members of the special forces that went into But the pride in America was returning. And then on that great inauguration day, when the announcement was made that the hostages had crossed out of the Iranian airspace and were homeward bound, the pride was seen in America in the form of millions of yellow ribbons and a tremendous welcome home celebration. The 26th Amendment is the last amendment so far added to our Constitution. This amendment gave all citizens over the age of 18 the right to vote. Of course, there have been more amendments proposed, the most recent being the Equal Rights Amendment. And as we continue into the future, our Constitution will continue to reflect the needs of the people. Now we have come to the 80s, and once again, conflicts continue. And again, we hear new names such as Beirut, Lebanon, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Grenada. But the pride we all have in America is back to stay, and the Army Materiel Command is providing the means for which America is to continue to maintain its decisive role in world leadership. Since 1978, the Army Materiel Command has fielded numerous new weapon systems and is at this present moment testing the weapon systems of the future. Ladies and gentlemen, we now bring you the sounds of the 80s, the music of the soldier of today who is using the equipment supplied by the efforts of all the members of the Army Materiel Command.
Notorious. Notorious. I can't read about it. Burns the skin from your eyes. I'll do fine without it. Is one you don't compromise. Lies come hard disguise. They need to fight it out, not fight about it. Bear your seed in judgments. Who says that part of our lives? You own the money, you control the witness. I'll leave it lonely, don't monkey with the business. You pay the profits to justify the reasons. I heard the promise, but I don't believe it. That's why I've done it again. Notorious. Girls will kill the secrets, long as the boys making noise. Fools run things to break up, something they'll never destroy. Plan, notorious plan. Who really gives a damn for shaking bandits? Don't ask me to plead about it. I need this blood to survive. You own the money, you control the witness. I'll leave it lonely, don't monkey with the business. You pay the profits to justify the reasons. I heard the promise, but I don't believe it. That's why I've done it again. Notorious. Notorious. You own the money, you control the witness. I'll leave it lonely, don't monkey with the business. You pay the profits to justify the reasons. I heard the promise, but I don't believe it. You own the money, you control the witness. I'll leave it lonely, don't monkey with the business. You pay the profits to justify the reasons. I heard the promise, but I don't believe it. That's why I've done it again. Notorious. Yeah, that's why I've done it again. Notorious. Yeah, that's why I've done it again. Notorious. Yeah, that's why I've done it again. So hip to be square, here, there, and everywhere. Hip, hip. Here, there, and everywhere. Hip, hip. So hip to be square, here, there, and everywhere. Here, there, and everywhere. Hip, hip. So hip to be square, here, there, and everywhere. Hip, hip. So hip to be square.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the close of our bicentennial concert. We have demonstrated through our music some of the compromises and conflicts that our great living Constitution has gone through, and also to demonstrate the pride we all have in America. Our pride is probably best expressed in Professor Catherine Lee Bates' poem entitled America the Beautiful. The first version of this poem was published in 1895. Professor Bates revised the poem several times before it reached its final form about 1918. In spite of several attempts to find a suitable melody especially composed for the poem, the tune Materna, written by Samuel Augustus Ward in 1982, remains wedded to Mrs. Bates' words. Carmen Dragon took Mr. Ward's melody and arranged it in a manner that at once reflects the great spirit of this nation, a spirit that shall never die. Ladies and gentlemen, please sit back and feel the pulse and spirit of America in Carmen Dragon's arrangement of America the Beautiful. I was born July 4th, 1776, and the Declaration of Independence is my birth certificate. The bloodlines of the world run through my veins, for I offer freedom to the oppressed. I am many things and many people. I am 200 million living souls and ghosts of millions who have died for me. I am Nathan Hale and Paul Revere. I stood at Lexington and fired the shot heard round the world. I am Washington, Jefferson, and Patrick Henry. I am Generals Lee and Grant. I am even Abraham Lincoln. I remember the Alamo, the Maine, and Pearl Harbor. When freedom called, I answered and stayed there until it was over there. I left my heroic dead in Flanders fields, on the rocks of Corregidor, on the bloody hills of Korea, and in the steaming jungles of Vietnam. I am the Brooklyn Bridge, the rolling wheat fields of Kansas, and the ever-watchful granite hills of Vermont. I am the coal fields of the Virginias and Pennsylvania, the Grand Canyon and California's Golden Gate. I am Independence Hall, the Monitor, and the Merrimack. I am forest, field, mountain, and desert. I am the quiet villages and the cities that never sleep. I am the ballot dropped into the box, the roar of crowds. I am the voice of the choir in the chapel. You see me in the lights of Christmas and hear me in the strains of Old Lang Syne as the calendar turns each year. Yes, I am the nation, and these are the things that I represent. I was conceived in freedom, and God willing, in freedom I'll spend the rest of my days. May I possess always the integrity, the courage, and the strength to keep myself unshackled and to remain the citadel of freedom and the beacon of strength to the rest of the world. This is my goal, my hope, and my prayer.